Hi there, this is Ronnie Amber's Night coming at you with a video. I want to sort of throw in my tuppence on this ongoing debate on Facebook about the social combat mechanic in games. For those who don't know about it, social combat is a mechanic put in several games, specifically that I know of is Song of Ice and Fire, which essentially, because of Song of Ice and Fire, the novels are very much interested in political machinations, intrigue, manipulation. The social mechanic, the social combat is there to place as a mechanic those ideas on a gaming table. The idea being that um, you would use your intimidation skill or manipulation skill in an attempt to wear down the person you're trying to intimidate or manipulate to the point where you either succeed in doing so or you completely fail and you end up in trouble for it. How do I feel about uh, these mechanics? I don't actually have a problem with them per se. I personally prefer that people roleplay, but not completely. I don't demand that uh, the player be as skilled as the character that they're playing, because they're not the character. The character can be more skilled in things than they are. The character could be less skilled in things than they are. But I essentially have them roleplay. When it comes to social combat, I would have them roleplay the debate. And then depending on how it went, I may give a bonus or a penalty to a role, be it an intimidate or manipulation role or whatever. And I think that's the right balance. I think if you don't do the role playing and you just make it a mechanical event, um, I think you lose some of the flavour of role playing. The other extreme, I think, is equally flawed. I think if you only allow role playing and don't allow for the mechanic, then you create an imbalance because you're not appreciating the the difference between a player and a character. And I think it's important to remember that players are not characters. The players are not those characters. They may be playing, but they are not them. And certain GMs have mentioned that they pretty much expect the players to only play characters or only hold the skill sets of the characters that are playing. I do not understand that point of view. I've tried to understand it and I simply don't. And I've pretty much stopped that debate because I just cannot get my head around. I mean, if you see the debate on the Facebook page, you'll see it. And I mean, I got quite frustrated simply because I just cannot understand how you can expect your players to be held accountable, you know, to the same standard as the character they're playing, because they are separate entities. And I think if you don't allow some mechanic or demand that players uh, have the same skill set as the character, or if they don't, that that character will be hamstrung. Um, I think you run the risk of blurring the line between player and character to what I believe an unhealthy degree. Um, so it's not something I would simply refuse, and I have said so. I would simply refuse to play with a GM like that because their demand is, in my opinion, unreasonable. But I couldn't go to that extreme, and I couldn't go to the extreme of it just being a role. You just, okay, I'm going to intimidate. That's not good enough for me either. Just saying, right, I will intimidate him and roll. I would want it to role play. However, I fully respect and understand that some people, and I count myself among them at times, are not natural orators, or they are people who are quite shy or timid, in that they could be very, they could be quite well educated, well spoken, but if you come up against a very good a player who's maybe quite intimidating by nature, not because they're trying to be, but because they're just about an aura, and the other player might feel timid and might feel somewhat unwilling to engage in a way that the characters wouldn't react, then I think it's right that you have a mechanic that helps that balance. Otherwise, you run the risk of players who are forceful, players who are quite intimidating, coming to the fore, even if the characters they're playing are not as forceful or intimidating as the player is, whilst other players who are perhaps quite timid, far more timid than the characters they're playing, might get pushed to the background. This creates an imbalance for me, which is why there is a mechanic of some description in most games. To get rid of the mechanic completely, I think, is unwise, unhelpful, unfair to players, and unhealthy. And I also think that relying solely on a mechanic is also unfair and unhelpful, because I think you can help people out of their sort of timidity, even if they're not giving a grand speech. If you get them, Games Master Toolbox makes this point about someone being at least giving you the bullet points of a speech, and then you can say, okay, I kind of see where you're going with it, make a roll, and you can add a plus or minus. I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable. That is the compromise that works. But I understand why games like A Song of Ice and Fire have that social combat mechanic, and I don't actually disapprove of it. I think it has a place. I understand why people would want to roleplay those, because it's something I would do. What I don't understand are people who would only roleplay and never use the mechanics to back up things, because that causes disparity. It is a game, folks. It's not real life. You cannot hold your players up to the standard of your characters. If we did, you'd never have a sci-fi game. You'd never have a fantasy game. You'd never have any other game other than a game that was set in the present day where the characters played themselves. The players played themselves as characters. And that would be bloody dull. So that's my thoughts on social combat. I'm sure the debate will continue in one form or another, but those are my thoughts.